I'm Carmen, and I have the pleasure of sitting with the one and only Anthony Ransom for the second time.
Well, it's not the one and only because I got Junior.
Okay, well, the Anthony Ransom of LT Electric. How's that?
That's cool too.
So, you are probably one of the most busiest people I know. You have a business, a TV show, a family. How do you balance it? Like, how are you doing these days?
I asked myself the same question. I think I just figure out as I go. Of course, if you ask my mother or my kids, I don't balance it well at all. So it depends on who you ask.
Well, what is your definition of well?
A balance,
Mm-hmm.
the way I see it is I make a agenda for the week and then I make an agenda for the day. And in my mind, as long as that gets done, I feel like I'm good. But,
Okay.
it works itself out.
Others have a different opinion of that, though.
I mean, everybody got things that's important to them. The things that's important to me get done, but sometimes the things that are important to me, but not necessarily a day-to-day thing for me, might get overlooked. But it's life.
Okay. Now, is that your definition of a living testimony?
Well, I mean, yeah, because as a person, what you see from a person, if I was to only meet a person one time and I see something that they do, or I see them, and I never see them again, that's my perception of them. That's all I have to go by, what they showed me. So I feel like what you show people is a living testimony.
So, you and I grew up together in the same neighborhood. How would you describe your upbringing? Would you say it was hard? What would you say your biggest challenge was?
Biggest challenge?
Mm-hmm.
Biggest challenge in a life full of challenges, I don't know. I would say that, I wouldn't really name it a challenge because I feel like it shaped me. It made me who I am. So I don't look at it as challenge. I just look at it as, a rough life and the projects, which I know you don't consider a project, but that's how I look at it.
Well, why would you consider it the projects?
It is the projects.
What
Anytime
makes
we
it the
got people,
projects?
if with half of the neighborhood got free lunch, we in the projects. Half the
Really?
neighborhood got public assistance, or what I'm saying, it's the projects.
Okay, so would you
That's how I
consider
view it.
that low income housing?
Well, yeah, I guess so. I
Okay.
mean, they
We
pay
go.
rent, I guess.
Would you say that's a daily motivator for you to never go back to that setting?
I feel like it's not a daily motivator to never go back to that setting. I feel like the daily motivation is to find the me's that reside in that setting now and
Okay.
give them the opportunity that I created to get out.
Fair. Now, as an entrepreneur, how do you balance between your work and personal life? How do you balance having to schedule all your jobs, make it to date night, make it to PTA, be there for your other family members? How does that work for you?
I really don't. I don't know how it happens, but it happens. My kids are important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then, relationships and friendships is another thing that's important to me. So everything has its space, but everybody that knows me just understands, like, right now my focus is, this initiative, the TV show and the business. That's how I feed my family. That's how I take care of them. So at that point, everybody sort of understands what my place is, and I just do the best I can to be where I need to be. Now, you talk about school, I don't miss nothing as far as school. As far as family time, I probably could do a little bit more of that, you know what I'm saying? But it is what it is. This is the life. If I worked at, a store, I got a set schedule. I go and I leave. You know, being where I am and, any owner or any entrepreneur from that sense, I feel like my phone could ring at any time.
Okay.
And when that happens, sometimes you gotta go. Sometimes you can send somebody else, but either way, you're responsible for that. You know what I'm saying? Versus working a 9 to 5, you go, you render to Caesar what's his, and then you free.
So that leads me into my next question. How do you, Anthony, define success?
I feel like I feel like success is a thing that's never really defined. I feel like success is a point that you will never reach. I just feel like success is you will never be completely successful. That's how I see it. I mean, I think that I've done a lot of great things right now, but would I say I'm successful? No, because I'm good where I am now, but I got further to go. So if I was to say that I'm successful, then that would mean that I've topped out. There's no further for me to go. That's just the way that I look at it. Other people may view it another way, but I just feel like I'm never successful. I feel like I'm good, but I feel like I can do better. And that keeps me going.
You saying that you never want to be complacent because in that instance you will lose a level of your skill set. How would you explain that to a young entrepreneur looking at you?
I mean, I would tell them, make your marks, you know, and then you just know as an entrepreneur, I set a goal for the year, and then I set a goal for quarters. I know that at some point I may reach that goal. Man, if I don't, it doesn't take away from the efforts that I put into reaching that goal because maybe I'll make it, maybe I won't. The first year in business, I said that I wanted to do X amount of dollars, but I didn't make it that year, but I made it 2 years after that. So does that mean that I'm not successful? I mean, make your marks and don't be discouraged when you don't make them because everything that you learn, you know what I'm saying, is a product of where you're going.
How long have you been doing electrical work?
I've been doing electrical work for about 13 years now. This will be my
13
14th
years.
year. Yeah.
How's it feel? From year one to now we're at year 13. What does that feel like for you?
I feel like from the electrical standpoint, when I started, um, I was I was thrown into it, and I needed, something to replace the negativity and replace, the different things I had going on. So it's that standpoint of it, and then from another place, you need to make money. Now it's just, fortunate for me. I wanted to be an electrician my whole life, so when the opportunity came, it's just like okay, and it did what it did from there. But I feel like the time, the longer that it gets, the more surreal it is. Because you look back at it and now it starts to date you like, man, if you've been doing this for 13 years, how old are you? You know what I'm saying? You start to see your life and just understand things differently.
I agree. Um, do you enjoy this as your career path?
Oh, yeah.
Do you enjoy it more now as a seasoned electrician, or did you enjoy it when you first got into the game when you didn't really know too much and you were just getting your feet wet?
I enjoyed doing the work in the beginning, and I feel like now I enjoy not having to do the work at this point, if that makes any sense. Because I liked it then, but after years and years of, beating up your body, crawling in attics, or, carrying materials and different things like that, it's wear and tear on your body. And there's a lot of people that's older than me that's still doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't know because now I do both, and I've sort of always been doing both because even before I was licensed, I was building my brand and doing anything. I didn't care if I was mounting TVs, and I was still managing then, and I'm managing now, but I still do work. So I just feel like they both equal.
Okay, now walk us through a day of what an electrician does. From the start of your day to the finish of your day. What does it look like?
Well, they got different electricians. So you got residential electricians, you got commercial electricians, you got industrial electricians.
What would you classify yourself as?
That's tough because we do commercial and residential, but it's different facets. A electrician that's doing residential, you know, it's a lot more leeway and a lot more lax during the day versus somebody doing commercial on a, fast-paced project. You know, it's always deadlines. It's always, things like that that's going on incrementally in the day. Not to say that residential doesn't have the same thing, but it's just two different paces more so.
Okay. How do you use your platform and how do you reach back into your community?
The number one thing that my business is predicated upon is the fact that I aim to go back, like I said earlier, and get people like myself. You know, a lot of kids who don't have fathers, a lot of kids that don't have big brothers and things of that nature. That's my number one way of giving back because I'm not only trying to give them a job, but I'm trying to show them what excellence looks like and let them know that it's possible to reach that. It's something that's attainable. It's not too far fetched that it can't be reached. You know what I'm saying? So that's the number one way. And then, some people who just really don't want to do electrical work, like he'd rather be a rapper. All right, cool. So, you just be positive to them. Or, if I could sow money or time or anything into their dream, something maybe you can get them if you got that type of relationship with them, Everybody doesn't want to do what I do. However, I tell people that the formula or the recipe for, being good at anything is the same. Whether you're selling drugs or, you're working for a 9 to 5 or you got your own business, it's all the same. So, I mean, I just give people what they need if I'm in this position to give it to them.
And when you say it's the same, what do you mean by that? Am I following? What code am I following? If I wanted to become an entrepreneur and I said, I looked at Tony's interview and I feel motivated, but I don't know what the same is. Like, what does that format look like?
That format is dedication, being consistent. And people, when I go speak at different schools and stuff, man, people always find it so weird that I say that it's the same. But at one point, if you're a drug dealer, you got to be outside. You got to be dedicated to being outside. Well, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you got to be dedicated to going into the area and demographic that your brand is going to be built in. And it's no different. If you're outside all the time, people are going to see you. They're going to purchase from you. If whatever you're doing, you're always in that field and you're there and you're doing things, you're making contacts. It's the same exact formula. It doesn't change. But people like to make it seem like it's not the same because the negative connotation that's attached to it. But it's really the same thing, though.
What noteworthy events in your life have led to your profession?
Yeah, I feel like it was one day, man, where I just thought that it would be so cool. I was working with my grandfather. He wanted me to fix cars. He wanted me to cut grass. He wanted me to do everything. And he's like, boy, you need to figure out what you're going to do. You need to do something other than just talking on the phone and doing this and that. And I'm like, man, I don't want to do this. And he asked me, what you want to do? And I'm like, man, I want to be an electrician. I don't know where that came from, but I thought that the idea of walking into somebody's house with a bag and being able to see behind walls and, when people got a problem, you could fix it. You know what I'm saying? I thought that that was so cool. I don't know why I thought that was cool, but I always liked that. Like it made me feel special. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I wanted to do. That was the moment that I figured out that I wanted to do that because he asked me while he's sitting under a car working. I'm like, dude, I'm not trying to do that. Like, it's not my thing. And he asked me and I told him. And then fast forward, when I finally got into electrical field, the first project that I ever did in the house was my grandmother's house because I couldn't get no work nowhere else. I was new, I didn't have customers. And I put lights in my grandmother's house in the living room. And when I was done, I went and showed my grandfather. And I'm like, yo, look at what I did. And he was just so, it was like a feeling that you can't even explain because he was so proud that I did it because he just seen me as this dude that just always going to parties and talking on the phone and think I could work with my hands, and he seen me do that. And then, right before he died, he went to a couple jobs with me, or he'd come and watch me do things and he'd talk his trash. But it's like, I feel good because that moment originated when we were working on that car. And I was like, yo, this is not what I want to do.
Would you say that was a defining moment in your life, your personal life?
Yeah, I feel like it was because, you know, as a kid that grows up without a father, man, you do a lot of searching as far as trying to figure out who you are. And I wasn't really focused on what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Granted, this conversation that me and him had transpired when I was probably like 11 or 12 years old. And then it didn't actually materialize until I turned 18, 19. So, it was a span of years in between where this whole thing just sort of snowballed and, compiled to become that defining moment. Because it wasn't that defining moment when it happened, but when it actually manifested itself, it's like, wow, this is where it originated from.
All right, so you've been working for a year feverishly. You went out there, you just knew that your show was going to be a hit, and then they told you no. How'd that make you feel?
I was crushed, man. I called my best friend on the phone. I'm like, bruh, you ain't gonna believe this. I'm like, they told me that it wasn't good enough. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah. Even though I think that secretly he already knew, before I went to California that it wasn't ready. And I feel like the people in California knew it wasn't ready too. But I think that, it was such a good idea that they wanted to see, what it was. And that's how I felt. I felt they brought me there, they seen what it was, and they said, this is what you need to do to get better. This has to be done, this has to be done, this has to be done. In my mind, I'm thinking that I just did everything that I thought was right, and it wasn't good enough. So, it was rough, man, because now I'm in LA and we had all these things scheduled and, parties we were gonna go to, they showing me around, but at that point I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to get back on the plane and go home and start working because I feel like they just played with me. So it's like I want to get back to work. So I got 2 more days in LA at this point, and it's like I'm just chilling in the room, man. And they call me every day like, hey man, we're gonna do such and such a day. You want to go? And I'm like, nah. At that point, I'm already networking and trying to figure out, what's my next move when I get back because this was an expensive trip. This is like people spend a lot of money on these type of things, and these meetings and things of that nature in Hollywood is not cheap. So it's like, yo, I just like cashed out one of my retirements to come out here, and like you said, it wasn't good enough. I don't want to go out. I want to go home.
Well, delayed does not mean defeated. And here we are a year later. So that no might have possibly been the best yes for you. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah,
Okay.
I agree that the things that happened in California couldn't have been better because it didn't just change the way that I do things for the show. It changed the way that I move in my business. It changed the way I see things. It gave me a different enlightenment of, you know, what things take to be successful on a general level. And when I came back home, everything was under a microscope. The business, you know, the show, my kids. I was looking at everything differently because it just was that time. People have different points of their life that cause them to, reflect or, rebuild themselves. And that was that time for me.
Fair, fair. So what would you say your philosophy towards your work is?
My philosophy on work is just work.
But
Just do it.
shouldn't work be enjoyable? I feel like, or at least I've heard that when you love what you do, it doesn't feel like work. Do you love being an electrician?
Yeah, I love being an electrician. A lot of people assess the word work and put a negative light on it, like work is a bad thing. But anything that you want, you're gonna have to work for it. And that's the thing with people. They want things without having to put the work in. Work is just work. You have to do it. It has to happen. And now, if you enjoy doing it or not is a separate thing. But work is just work. And that's how I look at it. That's how I approach it. Um, if I go to a house and there's three lights that need to be put up, then those three lights have to be put up. There's no ending around of it. It has to happen. That's it. So it's just work.
But just work means what? Like, if I am not in love with my job today, would I still give it the same effort as I would if, today's a good day for me? And I'm going to go in here and I'm going to attack this head on. Have you ever had those moments where, yeah, I'm not feeling it. I don't want to be an electrician today.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You have days where you don't feel it. You don't want to do it. But again, the fact still remains that it has to be done. Whether, no matter how you feel, no matter how you view it, it has to be done. Some days you don't feel like it. It's not even about electrical work. Some days I just may not feel like doing anything. Maybe I just want to sit in the house and play 2K and chill. But things have to be done. You know what I mean? And it's not so much about the job. It's not so much contingent upon that, but it's more so of the grand scheme of things. This work has to be done now because the work has to be done. This work is going to be, a part of what the end goal is. And that's how it is. It just has to happen. I mean, you have your days, but it's life.
What would your advice be to a young entrepreneur? So talk to yourself 13 years ago.
I would tell people, to figure out what it is that you really want to do. Lock in on what you really want to do and then pursue it relentlessly and never give up. Because I feel like there's been so many moments and so many things that, you know, I've wanted to do, but I may have talked myself out of those things. But eventually I'll come back around and do them. But imagine if I never, prolonged it or put it off thinking that I was inadequate or not good enough to do certain things. I just tell people, man, whatever you want to do it. So if I seen myself 13 years ago, I would tell myself to keep going. And it's the same information that I do give people now when I see them. If I see people and we happen to, you know, discuss what they're doing, their dreams, I just motivate them because that's the best thing that you could do for a person that already has the entrepreneurial spirit in them, man. All they need is somebody that tell them that they could do it, put the battery in their back. And I feel like it's a lot of people in my circle that told me, once I got started, because that's the hardest part, getting started. Once you get started, And then, you got people pushing you after you already got the wheel going. It's easy to pick up steam. But as an entrepreneur, the thing that makes you an entrepreneur is just starting, understanding how to start, the framework of what it takes to begin something. And I would tell people, focus on that. What is it going to take you to get started? Because your circle will give you, everything you need to keep going from that point. As an entrepreneur, you're just a starter. And that's what I'm telling them. Just start.
Just start.
Just start.